You're listening to the Naked Bible Podcast. To support this podcast, go to nakedbiblepodcast.com and click on the support link in the upper right-hand corner. If you're new to the podcast and Dr. Heiser's approach to the Bible, click on New Start Here at nakedbiblepodcast.com.
Welcome to the Naked Bible Podcast, episode 469, 1 Samuel 20. I'm the layman, Trey Strickland, and he's the scholar, Dr. Michael Brown. Dr. Brown, I thank you so much for filling in for the late Dr. Heiser. I really appreciate it.
It was amazing having him on the air and talking, and we got to spend some personal time together actually later in life, which was special. We had so much in common as people with PhDs in Near Eastern languages and literatures, and who had studied with scholars who had differing viewpoints than us, and both as believers. So, of course, his family misses him intensely, but we all miss him. And glad at least on some level we can keep his legacy going here.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it again. Well, I noticed you had a recent trip to Israel and Wales. Was that for vacation, pleasure, work? What was that about?
So I led a tour group to Israel. So I've been to Israel about 16, 17 times, but this was only about the fourth time that I brought a tour group. So we had about 85 people there. And it's amazing how life impacting it is. I mean, people telling me trip of a lifetime. They said we had super high expectations, but the trip was even more. Something just happens when you're there. I mean, you're standing on the Mount of Olives and talking about when Jesus will return to the Mount of Olives, or you're looking out on Mount Carmel, somewhere near where Elijah called down fire on the false prophets and called down fire on the sacrifices to kill the false prophets in 1 Kings 18. They're just different things that become so real. And then spiritual moments when you talk about what God did then and his reality working today. So I was there with the tour group and then flew over to Wales just for one day. There was a famous man of prayer, especially known during the time of World War II and thereafter, Rhys Howells in Wales. And he has a famous Bible school there. A Singaporean friend of mine now owns that. It really has made it a base for prayer, for revival and renewal. So I was there for a Bless Wales conference, one intensive day, and it was a beautiful time.
I can testify about what an impact a trip to Israel is. I was blessed to have gone with Dr. Heiser, and it was a true blessing to a trip of a lifetime. My number one bucket list, go to Jerusalem, so I achieved that. I love Israel. Well, I also wanted to ask you about your recent book that just came out titled, Why So Many Christians Have Left the Faith, Responding to the Deconstructionist Movement with Unshakable, Timeless Truth. What is that book about?
Yeah, there are prominent leaders that have now said we don't believe anymore. Pastors, worship leaders, different ones, some even professors, those involved in apologetics. And it's shaken a lot of people. Many young people have dropped out of church, and it's shaken people. Like, why are they falling away? And what's going on? And why is it that there seems to be an increase even in atheism in Gen Z? So this book is not to condemn people or to judge them. It's rather to open up the various things, how the arguments of the atheists and agnostics have just crept down or swept down into the larger culture. We talk about the scandals in the church and how that's hurt people, well-known leaders falling into sin, and how that's damaged people's faith. The societal shift, the celebration of everything gay. If gay is good, Christianity is bad. Often a lack of knowledge of Scripture. Questions about the goodness of God in light of suffering, in light of the teaching of hell. So we open up all the different reasons why people have fallen away, but in each chapter give solid answers. And Dr. Heiser and I, again, studied in circles where the people that we studied with didn't see things the way we did in many cases, didn't believe the Bible the way we did. So we're used to asking the hard questions and saying, it's okay to ask the questions because there are solid answers. And the more we study with an open and humble heart, rather than drawing us away from God, we'll be drawn to the Lord.
Absolutely. Well, that book is out now, and I take it anywhere you get a book, Amazon, or it's available as we speak?
Absolutely. And of course, on our website, all of our resources, including thousands of hours of free resources, Ask Dr. Brown, askdrbrown.org.
Perfect. Well, Dr. Brown, I'm super excited to get into chapter 20. I can't thank you enough for filling in. So here's chapter 20.
1 Samuel chapter 20. I'm going to go through some key elements in the chapter here and then bring in two areas of expertise that I have that will be relevant to the chapter. So rather than just going through the content and telling you what it says, what I want to do is dig in to a couple of controversies, one having to do with how these chapters in 1 Samuel 20, how these are used in the culture wars, how this text is misinterpreted by gay theologians and gay activists. Yeah, we'll talk about that. And then I want to dig deep into a specific Hebrew word and give you some Semitic insights on that as to why we could be translating it differently than many of our translations. So I'm going to dig in my areas of expertise, the latter with my studies like Dr. Heiser, our beloved brother, our missed brother, Semitic studies, a PhD in Near Eastern languages and literatures. So digging into Hebrew in its Semitic background, and then the former based on my calling to engage the culture wars for many years now. So 1 Samuel 20, the crisis now between David and Saul has exploded. Saul is furious, literally at times out of his mind, demonized with rage against David. And thinking of Jonathan, who's supposed to be the heir to the throne, Jonathan's loyalty seems to be with David, not with his father. So David flees from Naioth to Ramah. He comes to Jonathan and says, "What have I done? What is my crime and my guilt against your father that he seeks my life?" He replied, "Heaven forbid, you shall not die." By the way, I'm reading from the new JPS translation. "My father does not do anything great or small without disclosing it to me. Why should my father conceal this matter from me? It cannot be." David swore further, "Your father knows well that you're fond of me and has decided Jonathan must not learn of this or he will be grieved. But as the Lord lives and as you live, there's only one step between me and death." Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you want, I'll do it for you." So David says, "Look, your dad's ready to kill me." And Jonathan's like, no, there's no way I would know about it. He says, no, because your father knows how close we are. So he's not going to want you to know about this. David said to Jonathan, "Tomorrow's the new moon, and I'm to sit with the king at the meal. Instead, let me go, and I'll hide in the countryside until the third evening. If your father notes my absence, you say, 'David asked my permission to run down to his hometown, Bethlehem, for the whole family as its annual sacrifice there.' If he says, 'Good, your servant is safe,' but if his anger flares up, know that he is resolved to do me harm. Deal faithfully with your servant, since you have taken your servant into a covenant of the Lord with you. And if I'm guilty, kill me yourself, but don't make me go back to your father." Jonathan replied, "Don't talk like that. If I learn that my father has resolved to kill you, I will surely tell you about it." David said to Jonathan, "Who will tell me if your father answers you harshly?" Jonathan said to David, "Let's go out into the open." And they both went out into the open. So now they're going to hatch a plan that Jonathan can get a message to David if he's in trouble. Jonathan said to David, "By the Lord, the God of Israel, I will sound out my father at this time tomorrow or on the third day. And if his response is favorable for David, I'll send a message to you at once and disclose it to you. But if my father intends to do you harm, may the Lord do thus to Jonathan and more if I do not disclose it to you and send you off to escape unharmed. May the Lord be with you, as he used to be with my father. Nor shall you fail to show me the Lord's faithfulness while I'm alive, nor when I'm dead. Shall you ever discontinue your faithfulness to my house, not even after the Lord has wiped out every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth? Thus as Jonathan covenanted with the house of David, may the Lord requite the enemies of David." So there's a deep reality in these texts that Jonathan realizes the Lord is not with my father anymore. He raised up my father Saul, but he is not with him. Shaul, he is not with him anymore. But he is with you, David. Jonathan, he understands this, and he's made a covenant with David, and he knows that David is ultimately going to be the king of Israel. Jonathan, out of his love for David, adjured him again, for he loved him as himself. Jonathan said to him, "Tomorrow will be the new moon, and you'll be missed when your seat remains vacant. So the day after tomorrow, go down all the way to the place where you hid the other time, and stay close to the Ezel stone. Now I will shoot 3 arrows to one side of it as though I was shooting at a mark. And if I will order the boy to go and find the arrows, if I call to the boy, hey, the arrows are on this side of you, be reassured and come, for you are safe and there is no danger, as the Lord lives. But if instead I call to the lad, hey, the arrows are beyond you, then leave, for the Lord has sent you away. As for the promise we made to each other, may the Lord be witness between you and me forever. Now, reading from the new JPS, the text says, hey, I will order the boy to go and find the arrows. If I call to the boy, hey, the arrows on this side of you, be reassured, come. If instead I say to the lad, hey, the arrows are beyond you. All right, so I'm actually going to get into the Semitic thing first. So stay with me on this. It's going to get a little detailed in the Hebrew. If you look at other translations in 1 Samuel 21, what you'll find is, 1 Samuel chapter 20, instead of hey, what you'll find is, are not the arrows beyond you? Hey, now which is, just forget Hebrew. Let's say you don't know any Hebrew at all. You're just reading in English. And I'm saying, okay, listen, if I shoot the arrows and they're further than the boy's expecting, I say, hey, the arrows are down there. Or will I say, are not the arrows beyond you? Is that a logical way to say it? Or would you say, hey, they're beyond you? Hey seems more natural. Well, the Hebrew is halo. So that consists of two words made one, or a Hebrew letter attached to another word as one. So the first ha, that is an interrogative negative. It means what's following it is negative. All right? So, as a question, is asking a question. Ha, right? Halo is it not? Lo is not. Ha is it? Right? An interrogative. So halo, interrogative, negative. So ha is the interrogative part. Lo is the negative. Halo, is it not? Think of you're reading Chronicles or Kings, and it says, as for the rest of this, are they not written in this book? Are they not written? So we're used to seeing halo, but is it not, are they not, can also have the nuance of yes, indeed. In other words, it's rhetorical. When you say, aren't they written? Yeah, they're written there. Aren't the arrows beyond you? Yeah, they're beyond you. So that's how it's normally been understood. So in other words, when it says halo, is it not, are they not? It's just another way of saying, look, they're really there. Or hey, or think about it, look at it. All right, so that's the way it's normally been understood. You have the same thing in Arabic with as an interrogative, as an interrogative, and then la as a negative. Allah, is it not, which can also mean like, behold. Okay, so that's how we always learned it. That's how we always understood it. So I'm in grad school, and I'm doing an independent study with one other student, and we are reading what are called the El Amarna tablets. This was correspondence between a Canaanite leader and an Egyptian pharaoh. So it's correspondence in what was called Akkadian, the language of the Babylonians and Assyrians. And it's, say, 1300 years before the time of Jesus. So back close to the time of Moses, that far back, all right? And the reason it's in Akkadian is because that was what was called the lingua franca of the day. That was, if you're doing international correspondence in the Middle East, that's what you would use. So North African to the Middle East, Mesopotamia, etc. That's what you would use. Later it became Aramaic, right? Just like the lingua franca, the most common language used around the world today is English, right? If there's one language you can expect people to speak in various countries, English. Well, in that part of the world, then it was Akkadian. So the correspondence is in Akkadian. And we were reading the Akkadian text, and there was a German translation and commentary that we were then using, another student and myself, along the way in our PhD studies, or master's PhD studies. And I see this word, alu. And they're trying to figure out what it means and what it's related to. And some said it's related to Hebrew halo. It's a similar thing, and it's an interrogative negative, meaning is it not, which can then mean behold, right? So is it not? Isn't that true? Behold, it's true, right? the problem is it did not work in Akkadian. You had no such thing as an that was an interrogative, then the lu would be the negative. It just didn't work. And then it had other possibilities, and I thought, no, and then I looked at things it was parallel to. It's like, wait, this just means behold. Alu just means behold. Well, then we went over to a sister language. I started thinking about this, called Ugaritic. So this is North Canaanite, basically Syria. Start looking at that, and I'm thinking, wait, they also have HL and Halu, something like that, which means behold, indeed. And I thought, wait, Alu in Akkadian means behold. It's not, is it not? It just means behold. And the same thing with Ugaritic. It just means behold. And then I went back to the Hebrew Bible, and I thought, wait a second. Halo in certain places probably was originally halu, not meaning is it not, but indeed. And then in Aramaic, you have halu or alu, meaning indeed. I thought, this is it. This is not, is it, are not the arrows beyond you? No. Hey, halu, the arrows are beyond you. And then I found other passages in the Hebrew Bible where the only possible way to interpret it and understand it was saying, indeed, behold, look, hey. That's the only way that it could make sense. So that actually became an article that was published, I think, back in 1987 in the Semitic journal Ma'arav called Is It Not or Indeed, Halu in ancient Semitic. I forget the exact subtitle. So I wrote a whole article, and then that made its way into various Hebrew dictionaries and Ugaritic dictionaries as an authoritative study. So you say, I didn't need to hear all that. Well, come on. What? I'm trying to bring something insightful, useful, helpful to you. So overall, there's not a massive difference in meaning between aren't the arrows beyond you and hey, the arrows are beyond you. But it makes much more sense. And you say, oh, so did the new JPS translators understand this whole thing about halu and alu and all of this? No, they didn't. They just intuitively understood that it really is more like an exclamation, like, hello, hey. They just kind of grasped the meaning of it and rightly translated it without having that insight that I had that added to it. And then some other scholars took what I wrote and said, hey, let's subject this to a syntactical analysis. Let's subject this to a grammatical analysis so we can tell the difference between halo, because halo definitely does exist as an interrogative negative. Let's see the difference between that and where it is halu, indeed, hey, an exclamatory particle. And articles were written on that. So it's just been very interesting to watch this unfold. And it came out of, in an unexpected way, studying ancient Akkadian texts, ended up with this linguistic insight in the Hebrew. Where else are you going to get this but on the Naked Bible podcast, right? Okay, so back to the text. David hid in the field. The new moon came, and the king sat down to partake of the meal. When the king took his usual place on the seat by the wall, Jonathan rose, and Avner sat down at Saul's side, but David's place remained vacant. That day, however, Saul said nothing. It's accidental, he thought. He must be unclean and not yet cleansed. But on the day after the new moon, the second day, David's place was vacant again. So Saul said to his son Jonathan, why didn't the son of Jesse come to the meal yesterday or today? Referring to him as the son of Jesse, that's already derogatory. All right? That's already derogatory. Why didn't the son of Jesse come to the meal yesterday or today? Jonathan answered Saul, David begged leave of me to go to Bethlehem. He said, please let me go, for we're going to have a family feast in our town, and my brother has summoned me to it. Do me a favor. Let me slip away to see my kinsman. That's why he's not yet come to the king's table. Saul flew into a rage against Jonathan. He knew Jonathan was lying. You son of a perverse, rebellious woman, he shouted. So now Jonathan himself is no good, and his mother is no good. I know that you side with the son of Jesse to your shame and the shame of your mother's nakedness. Now, does this mean that David was having sexual relations with Jonathan? That Jonathan had chosen David over women? No, it's not what it's saying. It's not what the idiom means. Some would try to argue that. The shame of your mother's nakedness is the embarrassment that this brings her. So rather than you showing loyalty to your father's household and to your mother's household to be the next king of Israel, you show loyalty to this guy who's dangerous, underminer, and a threat. And that's a shameful thing that you've done. For as long as the son of Jesse lives on earth, neither you nor your kingship will be secure. Now that having brought to me for he is marked for death. But Jonathan spoke up and said to his father, why should he be put to death? What has he done? At that, Saul threw his spear at him to strike him down. He'd already tried to strike David now. Now he tries to kill his own son, Jonathan. And Jonathan realized that his father was determined to do away with David. Jonathan rose from the table in a rage. He ate no food on the second day of the new moon because he was grieved about David because his father had humiliated him. In the morning, Jonathan went out into the open for the meeting with David, accompanied by a young boy. He said to the boy, run ahead, find the arrows that I shoot. As the boy ran, he shot the arrows past him. When the boy came to the place where the arrows shot by David had fallen, Jonathan called out to the boy, hey! So in our Hebrew text, halo, but I believe should be vocalized halu. Hey, halu! The arrows are beyond you. And Jonathan called after the boy, quick, hurry up, don't stop. So Jonathan's boy gathered the arrows, came back to his master. The boy suspected nothing. Only Jonathan and David knew the arrangement. Jonathan handed the gear to his boy and told him, take these back to the town. When the boy got there, David emerged from his concealment at the Negev. He flung himself face down the ground, bowed low 3 times. They kissed each other and wept together. David wept the longer. Jonathan said to David, go in peace, for we two have sworn to each other in the name of the Lord. May the Lord be witness between you and me and between your offspring and mine forever. Oh, they kissed. You see, they kissed. This proves that they're gay lovers in the Bible, and they kissed. And elsewhere, they disrobe and exchange clothing and things like that. Okay, number one, Jonathan gets married and has children. Number 2, more importantly, David has multiple wives and almost destroys his old kingship because of his lust for women, lusting after Bathsheba, committing adultery with her and having her husband killed, and that brings judgment on him and subsequent generations. All right? So it's David's lust for women, David's insatiable desire for this beautiful woman that almost completely destroys his kingship, if not for God's covenant promise and faithfulness in David's heart of repentance. So to make David into a gay man does not work. And also, when the overall testimony of the Hebrew Bible is so categorically against same-sex behavior, same-sex relationships would be the thing that it would emphasize. You're not just going to, slip this account in and nobody happens to notice it. It's completely bogus. She said, but it says they kissed. Okay, in my book, A Queer Thing Happened to America, which came out in 2011, 700 pages, 1,500 endnotes, I have a footnote where let me read it to you. It's a lengthy footnote. Text cited to allege that Jonathan and David were gay lovers include 2 Samuel 18:3 and 4. Jonathan and David made a pact because Jonathan loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the cloak and tunic he was wearing and gave them to David together with a sword, bow, and belt. In 1 Samuel 20:41, when David has to flee for his life from King Saul, Jonathan's father, they kissed each other and wept together. David wept for a longer. So then I reference for a comprehensive refutation of a gay reading of these and other passages, see Robert Gagnon, The Bible and Homosexual Practice, where he demonstrates clearly how such a retelling of these texts is unthinkable from an ancient Hebraic point of view and totally uncalled for in terms of what the biblical text actually says. Regarding the act of kissing, as distinguished from making out, right, a sexual kiss, note that kissing was a common way of saying hello or goodbye in the ancient Near East, as it is in many cultures to this day. Furthermore, if all the kisses that the Bible recorded were interpreted in sexual terms, then Isaac would have been erotically involved with his own son, Genesis 27:26. Then his father Isaac said to him, come here, my son, and kiss me. Laban would have been erotically involved with his nephew Jacob, and Genesis 29:13. Laban would have been erotically involved with his grandchildren and daughters, Genesis 31:55. Esau would have been erotically involved with his brother Jacob, Genesis 33:4. Joseph would have been erotically involved with all his brothers, Genesis 45:15. Jacob would have been erotically involved with his grandsons, Genesis 48:10. Joseph would have been erotically involved with his just deceased father, Jacob, Genesis 51. And these are just samples from the first book of the Bible, Genesis. Obviously, all this public kissing was not in the least bit sexual. In the next book of the Bible, Exodus, we see Moses kissing his brother Aaron and his father-in-law Jethro, Exodus 4:27, Exodus 18:7. For a few examples of non-relatives kissing, see Samuel the prophet kissing Saul, 1 Samuel 10:1, David kissing Jonathan, 1 Samuel 20:41, Absalom the prince kissing all who would approach him, asking him to adjudicate on his behalf, 2 Samuel 15:5, David the king kissing the old man Barzillai, 2 Samuel 19:39, and Joab kissing Amasa, 2 Samuel 20, verse 9. Kissing as a form of greeting was so customary in New Testament times that Paul urged his readers to do what? Greet one another with a holy kiss. Romans 16:16 and other passages. On and on and on. So this is the equivalent of a handshake. You can go to countries today. When I preach in Italy, it's very common in certain circles there that at the end of the service, people want to greet you. And men and women, they each kiss you on both cheeks. It's not only the men that kiss the men, women kiss the women, but some women will kiss the men on both cheeks. That's all it is. Now, when the Bible wants to talk about a sensual kiss, look at Song of Solomon, the first chapter, the opening verses. When the Bible wants to talk about something sensual and sexual, it knows how to do it. Not a single sexual term is used anywhere in the Hebrew Bible in the relationship between David and Jonathan. Not a single one. When they exchange some garments in covenantal sign of friendship and loyalty, nothing sexual there. When they kiss before saying goodbye, not know if they're going to see each other again, I just gave you a list of everybody kissing everybody. That's all it is. Nothing sensual, nothing sexual, nothing romantic happened between them. When David says in 2 Samuel 1, your love for me was better than the love of women, he's not talking about, man, sex with you is hotter than with any lady. He's saying about the covenant loyalty we had is deeper than anything I've ever had with a woman. That's how deep the relationship was. And one thing that gay activism has done is stripped away the reality in many cases of deep, male, female friendships for life, covenantal friendships that are not romantic and are not sexual, and they've existed through the ages. So don't let anyone throw that nonsense on you about Jonathan and David. It is absolutely contrary to the scriptural witness. And last takeaway, covenant loyalty transcends pragmatism. That you do what's right because it's right. You hold to a friendship because it's right. Not because it's going to benefit you, but because you recognize this is right, this is good, this person is being unjustly treated. I'm going to stand with them, regardless of what it means in my own life. And history smiles on that, and God smiles on that. So be loyal. Be a real friend. Don't just do what's in your best interest, but do what's right, do what's good, and God will bless that.
All right, Dr. Brown. Well, I appreciate 1 Samuel chapter 20. Again, the best place for people to get more of your content, that's askdrbrown.org. Is that correct?
That's right. askdrbrown.org, or the Ask Dr. Brown Ministries app, AskDR Brown Ministries. You'll find all the free resources right there.
Perfect. Do you have anything new and exciting coming up for the rest of the year?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always traveling and speaking, of course. We continue to put out videos responding to counter-missionary rabbis. And I've got a book coming out in the fall that will talk about how to sustain revival when God is really moving in the church, how to sustain that. And then a book scheduled to come out after that, talking about how to move from spiritual revival to cultural reformation. So never a dull moment here.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Again, we want to thank Dr. Brown for coming on and helping us out with 1 Samuel. And I want to thank everybody else for listening to the Naked Bible Podcast. God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Naked Bible Podcast. To support this podcast, visit www.nakedbibleblog.com. To learn more about Dr. Heiser's other websites and blogs, go to www.drmsh.com.